So this video is about well, frames per second and do they matter? So frames per second, do they matter? That's a big question. I'm not sure I can answer the question completely in terms of your simulator and what you might get out of frames per second. But what I can say is that you hear a lot of people talk about frames per second in terms of the performance of not just a simulator, but other games. And I would say that they are important, but they are not the be all and end all. You should not get obsessively focused on increasing the number of frames that your simulator or your computer is able to deliver per second. There is a point beyond which, in my opinion, not only do they add no value, but they actually take processing resource from your CPU, your central processor, and from your GPU, your graphics processor, at the expense of other things that you might want them to do in the simulator. So below obviously 15, 20 frames per second, then you're going to see jumping. You're going to feel that the simulator is choppy or not smooth. But once you get up to 25, 30 frames per second, a little bit more possibly in VR, then added frames per second have some but limited value, in my opinion. So how do you know how many frames per second you have? So let's start with Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. So to find out your frames per second, what you do is you go into the main menu, options, and then if you tab down to the bottom, you'll see developer mode. You turn that on, come out again to the main menu, and when you go into the simulator, then you'll have an additional menu where you can select a number of options around loading various previous flights, but you can importantly tick to select frames per second, and it will give you not just the frames per second, but it will show you the relative load on your GPU, your graphics processing unit, and your CPU, central processing, the processor itself, and you can see where some of the strain might be and what you might need to upgrade. And that's in real time. So as you change that, so in my case, if you change the frame rate, so it's not synced to 60, if you change the frame rate, the frames per second will increase. So prepared. Those who fly prepared, and I fly prepared quite a lot, prepared version 5 now that it's actually, again, similar to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, the recent changes, in my view, have made prepared version 5 much more compatible, much more stable, and in my view, it is still a great simulator. So that's probably the most straightforward to be able to see frames per second in, and all you need to do when you're sat in the main cockpit or in the main screen of the simulator, just press Shift Z. So you need to do that twice. So the first Shift Z will give you coordinates. The second Shift Z, you can see in the line, will have the frames per second, and that again will give you again, I would say don't chase just faster frames per second, but what it can tell you is as you make changes to the simulator, it can give you a really good immediate feedback on whether they're slowing it down or speeding it up. Okay, and last but not least, Xplane. So Xplane, I think, well, it is the most complicated one of the simulators that I fly to check frames per second, but there is a really great plugin called the Fly with Lua, Lua plugin, that well, it doesn't just give you frames per second, it gives you loads of different scripts that you can run that will give you lots of different elements of data and lots of different tweaks that you can do to the simulator. So you can see here, you just go into Xplane.org. You need to register to download from Xplane.org, but if you I found this searching within Xplane.org to be really complicated, and I found that if you just put it in any search engine, Google, what have you, just search for Fly with Lua Xplane.org, and that'll take you to that plugin. You can download it and then install it into the modules folder of your simulator. And you can see here it comes with preloaded choices on graphics in a separate folder, sorry, scripts in a separate folder that you can just move into the main scripts folder and they will run. So you need then to go back and download a separate add-on called 3J FPS. 3J FPS, and if you go back in again, search for that 3J FPS on Xplane.org, download that plugin and then drop it in to the scripts folder, the 4 files into the scripts folder, and you'll see that it'll give you this additional menu item, an additional ability to see, not just to see the frames per second in Xplane, but also to tweak in real time different settings that will be adjusted to maintain those frames per second for you. And this is really helpful, particularly in VR. So there's another program that is possible to give you frames per second, and that's called Fraps. So if you download Fraps, I'm pretty sure you have to pay for it to get all of the full functionality. But if you download Fraps, as you run Fraps, you need to run it before you start the simulator. Then you can have a frame per second overlay, and you can choose to have that in one of any of the 4 corners of the screen, which will also give you access to frames per second, and you can see what's happening with the tweaks. It's a bit more fiddly because you have to have the Fraps program running before you set up the simulator, and it isn't built in or part of the simulator. So in my opinion, it is an option, but it would not be the option that I would recommend. So that's all I've got for you in this video. I hope that was useful. If you like it, subscribe, and feel free to leave any comments. I'm really interested in what you think, and I'll catch you next time.